Amascut here with the latest episode of Thoughts On. This one's been a little delayed. I've been pretty ill. And, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of recap on everything I needed to record a Thoughts On beforehand and hadn't yet. So, the first thing I'm gonna go ahead and touch on is the Christmas event that is, unfortunately, already out of the game. It was an interesting set of releases. It was a two-part event, and each of the events revisited Christmas events from the past. We revisited the 2007, the 2010, the 2011, and the 2005 Christmas events, I believe. And it was a bit of a weird event. The first three events that you got to play really didn't do much for me. While I enjoyed past Christmas events, simply replaying them wholesale with minimal to no changes really wasn't something I particularly cared for. These are some nice old events, and they were always enjoyable, but replaying them wholesale was not something I was really looking forward to doing. Um, the first part also, added some major issues with the Towering Feast story. I thought that was a very odd choice, especially now that the Wizard Tower has been graphically reworked, and it made the dialogue feel very strange. I'm kind of confused why they didn't go for the Scourge one, the Ghosts of Christmas Past, Present, and Future. I don't know why they didn't use that one instead of this Wizards one, because that one would have been a lot less awkward to integrate into today's RuneScape world. Um, However, it does hint a little bit. The first two stories really are the ones that hint at something going on behind the scenes. The imps are revolting, but you had to wait, and then part two, you get to revisit the 2005 Christmas event and discover that Diongo has gotten a little money hungry, and you gotta teach him the real meaning of Christmas. So you create yourself a marionette, you battle it out with him, and then you get your marionette enchanted, and then you battle that out with him again, and you beat him this time, and you kind of prove to him that you can have a great Christmas experience without needing to worry just about the profit and the money. Um, I really liked the way they heavily adjusted the 2005 event to tell a different story than what they did last time. This is really more along the lines of what I was expecting when they said that we would be revisiting past events, but with a twist. And I thought it really brought things home very well. It was a lot of fun. The rewards were pretty cool too. We got a nice staff, shield, bow, a sword, and offhand ice sword overrides, like the ones that the 2007 snowmen would wield. Everybody that did not have the snow globe from the 2007 event has gotten one. There's a new emote, the snowdrobe, which is like a wardrobe kind of thing. There was some skilling opportunities for people that wanted to play them. A 2016 snowboard with a special icon on it. And then also a new follower pet, a new home teleport. So there was a lot of just nice cosmetic wins here. This was also the winter weekends, which I believe we still have one left of. And then there was the advent calendar, which was nice. There was the Terrorbird racing that I never actually bothered to do. And yeah, Christmas. I thought Christmas was pretty well handled. Um, don't have a lot to say about it, but just good job, Ninja Team. It was definitely clear that they were working, under pretty limited budget and pretty limited scope, and I think what they did with it was reasonable. It wasn't anything amazing, especially nowhere near as amazing as last year's. Last year's Christmas event is a shining pinnacle of how to do a Christmas event. But yeah, it was enjoyable. Next up, we're going to talk about the recently released Memories of Guthix, or Memorial to Guthix, I'm sorry, which was came out on, let's see, that was what, Monday the 9th, I believe, just about a week ago. By the time this video is up, it'll probably have been just, a week. And in this update, a memorial to Guthix that used to serve as kind of a temple and gathering place for him has been discovered north of Eagle's Peak. And it turns out that this location has been hidden, but has been there forever. And you can find little shards of Guthix's memories called engrams hidden around the world, and then charge them with strands of memories and various energy in order to channel Guthix's memories, learn a little bit more about him, learn more about his interactions with the world and the people in it. And in the end, unlock some really handy divination benefits. So first and foremost, it's about 6 hours per prestige. There's 3 levels of prestige, and once you complete the third one, you can have 4 of these extra benefits active at once. There's Harmony of Nargan, which spawns Guthixian butterflies instead of Chronicles. Time Worn Memories, which it takes the experience from converting memories inside Dungeoneering and multiplies it by 4. Decree of Morality, which when checking Hunter Traps, it has a chance of yielding an item that turns into Divine Energy products. Guardian of Life is the same thing as the last one, but with farming. Ethereal Connection, the duration of Divination Springs is increased. This is about half of the increase that a Fading Memory would give. Shared Knowledge, Divine Locations grant 125% XP, but you don't get items anymore. Abyssal Transit, Chronicles can now just be offered from your inventory, which is awesome. Wisp Herder, converting memories has a small chance to spawn an additional wisp nearby. Sempiternal Souvenirs, same as the Hunter and the farming one, but when you pickpocket, you get a chance to get memory shards. Fairy Fire, fire spirits from firemaking are now divine fire spirits, also granting experience, energy, and products. Argento's Kindness, divine eggs may appear instead of bird's nests when woodcutting, granting div XP, div energy, and products. And then finally, Stored Power. The benefits from fully completing a Guthix cache will be bottled for future use. So on your first go around, you can only get access to one. I personally was running Harmony of Nargan for most part, and then swapped over to Ethereal Connection once I unlocked that. Honestly, just unlocking the further duration of Divination Springs is very powerful in my eyes, and was definitely the one I was targeting. I've only completed a first prestige, so I just have Ethereal Connection, and then I also have Wisp Herder active, because with Wisp Herder, when you're converting memories, it means you can get some wisps spawning right next to the rift that'll start you off a little quicker in the next round. The other ones that are very interesting to me would be, Stored Power seems very nice, allowing you to pop a Guthixian cache whenever you're really interested in it, instead of forcing yourself to, work within that time. I also like the Sempiternal Souvenirs, because thieving is always relevant to me if I want to get like an elite clue scroll or something. So just getting some little bonuses from that is nice. And I also like the Harmony of Nauragun one, because Guthixian butterflies are, a nice little bit of extra bonus XP. No complaints on those. If I wasn't running Harmony of Nauragun, I would be taking Abyssal Transit though, because then I can just offer the Chronicles from my inventory. Another very nice thing about this update is that it actually uncapped Chronicles, as far as I can tell. You get them a lot more commonly now, and it's very helpful. Additionally, there's some benefits for having 99, 120, and 200 mil XP in the skill. It'll just kind of help speed up after you've finished your first prestige. Orla Fairweather, who kind of runs this, will give you some of these memory strands, either 2, 3, or 4K, depending on which one you have access to. And that just kind of helps speed things along. To fully complete this, it's about 32 hours of content, the majority of which is doing divination. And really, I don't have any complaints about this. This is like the aquarium for divination, and I'm a big fan. I really like the addition of these handy extra benefits, and I like the way that we're forced to choose between them. Once a week, it resets, and you're allowed to choose new benefits if you so wish. And I'm really, really like this. I have no complaints about this update at all. Making things even better beyond just the nice base changes to the gameplay is the absolutely stunning graphics and beautiful music, and the absolutely spectacular lore. This thing is amazing. We learn so much from this. We learn about Guthix's past with the Guardians of Guthix. We learn about we learn about who the Balance Elemental was. We even get some awesome callbacks to the God Letters through the Sheep one. Some more about Naragi, more about the fairy backgrounds. We learn that Ganodermic beasts originated from another world. We learn that Garaho actually originated from another world. We get to see some really interesting thoughts from Guthix too, about just the nature of life, We learn more about the way the blade worked and how Guthix, after breaking the blade through the excuse me, after he broke the blade by accidentally piercing the void, how he used those little pieces to hold open connections to each of the elemental rune crafting altars. Um, we learn more about how Xanaris is a nexus of travel across the world. We learn about more about the background of Argento, the first of the spirit trees. That in a cutscene during the Gnome series, we can see, dead. We learn more about the World Gate and how Guthix used it after the blade broke. We learn more about the Druids and really their interactions with Guthix as well. Furthermore, more and more information about the Stone of Jas. My One of my personal favorites though is the Time. It's just called Time, and it it talks about Guthix's thoughts after we go visit him during the Light Within. When we go back in time and we speak to him, and we can tell him that he dies in the future and that we've been sent back to get some more information. And it's this really just beautiful evolution of looking at as Guthix is really, coming to terms with the fact that he is going to die one day and he's going to have to prepare for that eventuality. And, what has he done for this world? This is very, very beautiful. The Sword of Edicts one is really nice too. Just Guthix's anger at everything. The story with Juna as well, I thought was really wonderfully done. But the Balance Elemental one is really the biggest in my eyes. This one finally tells us who the Balance Elemental was. And what was so awesome about this is the Balance Elemental turned out to be 5 characters from the Armies of Gielinor game. The core of it was a not technically newly introduced Guardians of Guthix, but a character we've known of that is now revealed to have been a Guardian of Guthix named Aeternam. She was the mage that froze the Temple of Lost Ancients, better known as the God Wars dungeon. And we discover that she, along with 4 elemental mages, were fused together along with the power of time to create this Balance Elemental, the final Guardian of Guthix per se. And with this character confirmed as a Guardian, I believe that we actually have the full list of the Guardians of Guthix, which is really nice because this is a lot of information that we'd really been waiting for the longest time. Really, really wonderful reveal, really cool piece of information, and they did such a great job of tying both the God Letters and Armies of Guthix's little bit disparate lore together, and really just use it really well and interestingly. I love that they took the time to research these and integrate them into the lore of the game. So major kudos on the writing for all of this. Really, really spectacularly done. It's a beautiful, beautiful update, and I'm really glad it happened. It coming out as a surprise was a really nice, exciting twist as well. So more like this, please. Now we're going to take a little bit of a total side detour here. If you're not interested in old school RuneScape at all, you can probably go ahead and stop listening here. I'm going to briefly touch on old school's latest release, Raids. I am not an old school player myself, but I really enjoy keeping up with the content there. I just simply don't have the time or the patience to play 2 RuneScape games, and I'm personally not super big on the old school combat. But I think that the old school team has a really fantastic group of developers with really creative imaginations, making some really cool content. And I've been really excitedly watching the progression of Zaya as they make it. And finally, with the release of Mount Quidamortum and the Chambers of Xeric, old school has its first set of raids. They unlocked a little swampy area that leads up to a large mountain, and inside, players can raid in the Chambers of Xeric. Xeric is this necromantic sort of wizard who ruled the city of Great Korend, and truly evil guy, driven away during the wars, and it seems like many of his generals and powerful beings are locked up within these chambers, though what's actually happened to Xeric is still very much unknown. I think the closest comparison in RS3 to what the Chambers of Xeric is it's like if somebody took Dungeoneering but let us take our own gear inside. You have to make things like food and potions in there, but your gear, your armor, your setup is what you're going to take in there and battle off all these bosses. There's a couple puzzles, nowhere near as many as Dungeoneering, and less, empty rooms or less trashy rooms, or really just, less puzzles overall. And it really focuses on kind of having a couple of bosses that you've got to defeat, as well as prepare yourself with fishing and hunter and farming and potions and all that. And let's see, there are seven, I believe, bosses: Tecton, Vespula, Vanguard, Ice Demons, Mutadiles, Vasa, Nistrio, and the Great Olm. And I really like the majority of these bosses. I've watched quite a few videos on how these guys work. And I'm just gonna go over them each in brief, both their lore and their mechanics, because I think they're pretty cool. So, Tecton is like this large. He's almost like a Greek Titan looking guy with one of his hands made out of a molten hot blade. Apparently, he was Zarek's smith or artisan, and he helped create these chambers. After Great Crond rose up and defeated Zarek, Tecton was apparently one of the few that remained loyal, and he helped Zarek build the cavern, and gave Tecton the ability to use the magics within, but was disappointed when everyone else also began to use it. Later, Zarek took Tecton into the caves themselves, and gave him immortality by taking his mind out of his body and putting it into this beautifully new, indestructible body. But now Zarek works faithfully at his anvil, hoping Zarek will return. So players will encounter him standing in the middle of the room working with a magnetic anvil, and when somebody gets near him, he starts attacking. He hits with melee, as far as I'm aware. I don't think he hits with anything else. And you pretty much will have to melee him. He takes almost no damage from the other two styles. And he lets out these like waves of auras underneath him at certain times to tell you what type of damage he'll be weak to. He will also heal by returning to his anvil and shoot out sparks, hit with this comet ability. And he can also occasionally drop an onyx, it appears. Really interesting looking boss, though. Don't have anything super crazy to say about him, though, but his appearance, especially for old school, is very exciting looking. Very sharp, contrasting lines. Very pretty looking. I think his arena is fairly simple for the best. Next up is Vespula. It is an abyssal parasite that Zarek and his followers found when, ripping their way around the universe. I think this is my least favorite of the bosses visually. I think the colors contrast way too hard, fairly ugly, honestly, which is really disappointing because I think the mechanics on this boss is one of the most creative that the team did for these raids. You have to battle the boss itself, but you also have groups that are keeping these grubs fed, and if they are not fed, they will hatch and will heal an abyssal portal that you're trying to close. So really, while you're fighting against Vespula itself, you're really trying to destroy the portal that's keeping it alive. But there's grubs that are trying to keep the portal alive, and you have to keep them, pacified and fed. And it's very frantic, and it's very, very cool. I think, like I said, probably one of my favorite out of these fights. The next one is a trio called the Vanguards. There's 3 of them. They were, high-ranking officers within Zarek's guard, but when Great Crond rose up against him, all 3 of them fled, and later then tried to return to Zarek, who seemed very interested in, letting them back into his army, only to trap them within the chambers and turn them into these slug-like creatures. To kill them, there's 3 of them, so one is range, one is mage, one is melee, and each one is, weak to their normal style. But you have to kill them fairly evenly. If you don't, they believe they start healing when they go underground. So really, it's all about team coordination, where each party has to split off properly between the 3 bosses and kill them at a fairly even rate. During the fight as well, they will sink underground and will deal damage to other players and can heal if you have not damaged them equally enough. Next up is the Ice Demon. I think this is the most boring of the fights in my opinion. Basically, you have to chop a bunch of wood and then light them in braziers and keep lighting the braziers until the demon melts, and then really just kill the demon. He doesn't really have much special and special attacks. It's really just a burn this stuff fast enough before the pyre fiends put it out, which is fine. Like I'm not gonna complain, but it's fairly dull compared to the other bosses. The mutadiles, there's two of them. One is in the water, one is out of the water, and it tries to heal by eating off of a meat tree, and the players are supposed to block it or chop the tree down and stop it. And once you kill both mutadiles, you win this fight. These mutadiles were a dog that was mutated into a huge beast by the mutadile trainer or whatever. And then that one was pregnant and it gave birth to another mutadile. And yeah, they're really creepy looking. They're like dog crocodiles with big sores on their back. Next up is Vasa Nisterio, which is really probably my favorite looking boss. This was an elder of the Arceus house, fused and bound to these dark magical crystals. When you first approach, he's really just a pile of rocks, and then he animates himself, and there's purple flames everywhere. Overall, I just found this fight to be a really spectacular use of that old style but very crystal and color heavy graphics that a lot of Zaya has been making use of. You know, for such an old looking style, they've really gotten the best visual appearance out of this boss, in my opinion, by keeping the details sparse and not going too heavy on it, keeping details small. I think it works very well. From my understanding, this boss mostly attacks with magic and ranged, but he can also hit with melee. He throws AoE attacks down. He moves towards these clusters of crystals in the corner, so you have to stop him from getting them, or otherwise he'll start healing. He has a special where he'll teleport people around the room, and he can then stun and disable the prayers of those that end up next to him. And he also has the ability to unleash this magical attack that hits everyone nearby, hitting pretty hard too. And he can even go immune while charging that. He also stomps things underneath him, but I assume that's to try and get rid of walking tactics. Really, really interesting boss design here, though. I think it's the wildest, the wildest fight. It's got a lot of mechanics going on, and yeah, his lore is pretty interesting too. He essentially has gone completely insane while working with Zarek, and wanted to just keep dominion over Great Corrend. But now that they're outside of Great Corrend, he believes that he can find so much more. And yeah, he's very interesting. But then just to make things even crazier is that Nisterio believes that Zarek has abandoned him and that Zarek doesn't need him anymore, and that he himself has become a god. And as a god, he needs no priests. He is just himself, and he's completely insane. And I thought that was very well written. Finally is the Great Olm boss. Gigantic white dragon poking out of a big, chasm in the ground. Really crazy looking. This is probably the most complex boss Old School has ever seen. Unfortunately, for what I'm used to in RS3, it's still not all that crazy complex, but it's got a really nice rotation of abilities, including disabling overhead prayers, these cool little acid puddles that you can force a player to trail around, so it kind of requires you to move yourself tactically away from your team. He can make use of crystals in the room. A big theme of this raid dungeon is these crystals laying around, and Great Olm can really manipulate them and make them explode and make them fall. He's got this firewall attack too, that players have to kind of escape from. There's one that is called Burn With Me that I don't really understand the mechanic of it, but basically you want to stack all these players together, and one will scream burn with me, and the others will go I will burn with you, and I assume it's kind of a damage mitigation by standing together. Olm also shoots out these lightning attacks, disabling prayers, I believe, dealing a bit of damage. He also heals and can siphon in life as well. So what's interesting about this boss is he's really kind of three parts. He's got two claws and his head. And he attacks mostly with the head, but you've got to take out the claws at certain times in order to get to his head as you progress through the phases. Um, his attack rotation is fairly, normal. There's not really anything crazy about it. You in phase one, you've just got to get rid of the hands after a certain amount of damage to them, and phase two one, and then phase two is pretty much the same as phase one, but it's got a different order of attacks. And then phase three is you have to actually kill both the hands at the same time, and then you'll actually be able to beat him. Also very interesting is that people have noticed that the way the head moves back and forth is the direction he'll be attacking. So if you pay attention and move back and forth, you can actually dodge quite a bit of his attacks, which I think is really creative and cool. Yeah, he's a very nice, or she, I'm actually uncertain what their gender is supposed to be. It is very nice looking boss, though. Nothing insane. I think the mouth is super derpy looking, but the idea of this massive, dragon coiled up in the depths and coming out just to attack is really, really cool, and definitely something worth checking out. Beyond all of the cool bosses in the lore, though, the drops are really what everybody's coming for. So, all in all, there's a lot of rewards from this, and the way it works is you get chances, you drop chances like with every boss, but the less you die and the quicker your team makes it through, the better chance you have of better loot. And they added a lot of stuff. They added the dragon short sword, which nobody seems to really care about. It's a dragon item. They added dragon claws. Obviously, everybody cares about these. These are dragon claws. I do find it funny that they've actually released dragon claws, though, because I remember back when old school was a thing. Everybody was, no dragon claws. Dragon claws will never happen. And now they're here, and I don't hear people complaining very much. They passed a poll. But it's good to see them again. There is a new maul that is level 75 attack and strength, and it is the highest hitting slow crush weapon in the game. It does not have a special attack, though. There is also a Dragon Hunter crossbow, which is a 65 ranged weapon and increases accuracy and damage by 10% when fighting dragons, which is really cool. And I like, I love niche items like this, where for this specific purpose, this item is really, really useful. There's the Dragon Throne Axe, which is a fairly nice ranged spec weapon. Allows you to get some multiple hits in a row. There is the supremely overpowered Twisted Bow, which it works fairly differently from other bows. The higher the target, their magic level is, the more accurate and damaging the bow will be, to some pretty ridiculous extremes where well over 100 can be hit on some bosses. Well over 200 even in some cases, but obviously that'd be very, very rare. But it's a super strong weapon, and I totally get why everybody's leaping on that now. There is a Twisted Buckler, which is a 75 ranged and defense shield with the best ranged attack bonus in the offhand slot. So nowhere near as good as its main hand counterpart, but it's got a nice little extra bonus to it. There are level 75 magic 65 defense armor called the Ancestral Robes. I don't believe they have any special effects beyond just the fact that they are level 75 mage gear with some bonuses on them, which is nice. There is the Kodai Wand, which allows its user to autocast ancient magics and provides an infinite amount of water runes. It also has a 15% chance of negating rune costs. Crazy useful. There is nothing to complain about with this wand. It's a level 75 wand that can autocast ancients, gives free water runes, and can save runes. Great wand. This next item is the one that I had the highest hopes for and am completely crushed that it sucks. It's called Din's Bulwark. Basically, it's a two-handed shield. You can either hit people with it or go into full block mode. And it seemed like this item was going to be awesome, but I cannot even figure out a single use for it. Basically, you either deal reduced damage by hitting with it, or you literally cannot attack at all. because you're in block mode. And I think while it's handy for like a tanking item, you want to be able to deal damage too. And so in the end, it's just not useful, which is a shame. Um, Another item that was released is the Dragon Harpoon. Big fan of this one. This is a harpoon for fishing. Um, they're actually adding a fancy tier. It increases your catch rate a little faster, and can be upgraded to the what is it? The using a smoldering stone from Cerberus to create an infernal harpoon, which will cook your fish for you occasionally. There are 3 new prayers as well that can be unlocked from the dungeon. There's the Preserve Prayer, which increases boosted stats by 20%. Increases the length they stay boosted. This is essentially the Berserker Prayer from the ancient spell or ancient prayer curses. Jeez, I can't speak. In RuneScape 3. Then there is Rigor and Augury, which are the equivalents of Piety for ranged magic. There is a Dark Relic drop, which just gives you a bunch of XP. The Ancient Tablet, which will allow the players. Let's see. Yeah, I believe this. It can be used on Xeric's Talisman to let the talisman teleport you up to the top of the mountain. Not quite sure how you earn it though. And then finally, there's the Omelet Pet. Name's hilarious, but whew, pet does not look good. Pet does not look good, which is a shame. But it's pretty cool. Overall, though, I really like what they did with this update. They've added another successful section of Zaya with a number of reasonably creative bosses and some nice rewards across the board. It's clear that they put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this. It launched fairly bug-free, which was really impressive, and just seems like it'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people. So, great job, guys. Next video you'll be seeing from me will be about the year ahead BTS. Got a lot of information about what's coming up for the rest of up through June, July kind of time. So I'm gonna go through pretty much everything in that and just have a little chit chat about that. Thanks so much for listening. I've been Amascut, and these were my thoughts on the Christmas event, the Memorial to Guthix, and Old School's newest raids. Thanks for watching.